about the PI system in the oil and gas industry. In my role as industry principal for oil and gas, I have the opportunity to travel the world and talk with many of the leading oil and gas companies about the PI system, its value proposition, and how they can use it better to help their company's performance. And my goal today is to help share with you how they use it, why they're using it, and the value that they're getting from it, with the goal of helping you understand the PI system better and to help you understand why the PI system is being used in industry and how it's being used to drive business value. One of the unique advantages I have is I've had the opportunity in my 30-plus years in working in the industry to work for both a customer, where we justified and installed 37 different PI systems, and also with many of the companies you do business with, Honeywell and AspenTech. And in doing so, I think that brings a unique perspective of helping you understand the value proposition of the PI and potentially how the PI system works with and is different than, say, an AspenTech or a Honeywell PhD or some of the solutions that they may be providing. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the PI system in oil and gas, how oil and gas and companies are using the PI system to deliver value to their organizations. And during these two sections, I'm going to be focused more on concepts, critical concepts, that I think are important to help you understand how the PI system is being used and why it's being used. And then I will follow that with, as time permits, as many case studies, the art of the possible, to help illustrate these core concepts. I will be here through Saturday, actually, enjoying your company in the city of Seoul. But I would encourage you, if you have some specific questions or some case studies that would help you, please look me up or work with the local Korean OSI force to submit your question, and I will do my best to follow up with you. What I'm going to talk a little bit about now is maybe a little bit different. You saw this slides presented by Martin Otterson this morning. I'm going to give a little bit different take on it, again, to set context for the PI system in the oil and gas industry. At the bottom, you have, again, the portfolio of data sources and systems that generate a multitude of and types of data. And then you have the value stream elements of the oil and gas industry. Each of your companies maybe operates in a segment or a couple of segments of these particular areas of the oil and gas value chain. But you also have an infrastructure, your data centers, your trading, your IT networks, etc. And so what you have is a large amount of what is called streaming data and events. You have context and a hierarchy of the data, your assets, your divisions, your company, your enterprise. The PI system is the infrastructure that binds all this together, and in doing so provides the opportunity to perform operational analytics and visualization, largely using the Microsoft stack of products, and most importantly, allows you an infrastructure to configure PI system-based applications and the integration of what I call best-of-breed solutions from companies like Aspen or Honeywell or Maximo, etc. And lastly, to integrate with big data systems, the cloud, and business systems. Switching gears a little bit, the PI system has a dominant position within the oil and gas industry, and I think is really a statement of value of how the oil and gas industry views the value proposition of the PI system. In particularly, I'd like to point out in the refining and petrochemical industry, the PI system is used in over 60% of the global production of refined products and petrochemical complex. So why are companies using the PI system? First and foremost, it's really this concept of value now, value over time. It's the ability to install the PI system and get value out of the box, the initial installation and configuring and using the PI system capabilities. And then to, over time, layer on PI-based applications and solutions on top of the infrastructure. This is a much different approach than going out and buying what I call a big solution and trying to implement that at once. And I find in my personal experience that it's actually lower cost and lower risk over time. Next is the performance and functionality. You've heard a lot about the PI system performance and around the ability to aggregate, to normalize, to add context, the analyzation, the visualization, and the propagation of data. And also you've heard about some of the intrinsic values of the PI system infrastructure, reliability, the availability, the extensibility, and security. And probably one of the biggest areas I see in today's marketplace is to drive to increase asset reliability, safety, and asset performance. Next is the area to integrate across the value chain of a company, across the plant, division, enterprise, and the ecosystem that the company operates in. And lastly, it's around digital security, the data volume, the quality, and the need for cyber and data security. In looking at our customer base, I'd like to characterize two different groups. The first group are customers who are using PI system. They're using it tactically, project by project, and they're using some percentage of the capability of the PI system. And you can see that many of these customers have a large number of PI systems. Saudi Aramco, 100 PI systems. Petrobras, 50. Pemex, 35. So they have a lot of PI systems, but they're continuing to evolve in this level of use, moving towards what I would call a strategic use of the PI system versus a tactical. And then we have a group of customers who are using the PI system strategically. And what I mean by that is they have strategically standardized on PI as a real-time data infrastructure across their entire organization, where they have unlimited access to all the PI system infrastructure software, and they have a consultative partnership with OSIsoft where we're helping them get the most value out of their PI system infrastructure. And as you'll see, and I'll talk about it, they are, as I would call it, revolutionizing the way they're doing their applications and solutions with significant value creation. The PI infrastructure is a critical component of their cybersecurity and data security strategy. And lastly, I find that using benchmarks is their typical tags and number of assets they're using AF is typically twice, in some cases double or triple, more than other non-EA type customers, indicating significant value creation by using the advanced functionality of the PI system. So let's kind of transition a little bit about how the PI system is being used by oil and gas companies. If I had to pick 4 broad categories, these are the 4 that I come up with. The first is in the area of asset performance and reliability. What you see is a process book display of a asset performance by Talisman. This is a case study that I hope to have an opportunity to go through. And you can see things like operating envelopes and context data to really characterize the performance curve of a particular asset. This is another example of a company that built a PI-based gas turbine health monitoring application on top of PI. The next area is the area of operations monitoring, reporting, collaboration, and business intelligence. The display there is of the Chevron Richmond refinery, where they've consolidated their KPIs and performance displays into a web portal, where they're also checking meter accuracy and have incorporated yield performance from their models compared with the actual performance from their units. Next is MOL. This is a refinery in Europe, and this is a picture of their display, their management dashboard, where they're out looking at all their refineries and value chain. Next is the area of Pemex. Pemex uses the PI system pervasively. This happens to be an overview of their terminals and product inventories across their country. Next is the area of energy, environmental, and quality management. This is another display of PEMEX. It's actually as a data link display in Excel using some of the more advanced Microsoft business intelligence functionality. Sun Chemicals. This is a picture of their, essentially their energy management and power management display. And the last area is in value chain integration. This is a display that I'll talk about as Pertamina, where they've used the PI system to integrate their entire fuels value chain. Or NiSource, who've integrated with the PI system their entire gas distribution, transmission and distribution system. Or again, MOL, who've used the PI system to integrate all their refineries, pipelines, distribution into one system. So, concept slide. At the bottom, you have, again, all the data sources going into the PI system real-time infrastructure. And the top, you have your typical enterprise operations management like solutions. And in between, you have this, what I call this application and solution functionality space. So if I pull this back, you'll see typical functional blocks like condition-based maintenance or operational intelligence. And so what companies are doing, like Shell, is they're strategically going through and looking at these applications and solutions, many of which are MES applications that they've purchased from Honeywell or Aspen, and they're essentially collapsing those into the PI system infrastructure. And in doing so, they're revolutionizing their IT and applications landscape, simplifying and streamlining all their applications and solutions. Another area I'd like to talk about is many of you use MES solutions from Aspen or Honeywell or Yokogawa, correct? And in looking at the typical ISA S95 stack, in the middle here you have MES, and at the top, typical ERP. And one way to look at the PI system infrastructure and what companies are doing is that they are essentially pushing or layering in the PI infrastructure both at the MES layer and at the enterprise layer. So they're not replacing MES, they're just changing or moving some of the functionality traditionally purchased with an MES solution into the PI system infrastructure. And so essentially the key takeaway from this slide is it's MES and PI leveraging a best-of-breed approach. So just because a company or you have Aspen or Honeywell or Yokogawa MES solutions does not mean that there's still not a good value proposition for using PI as an infrastructure and then kind of over time changing the amount of functionality you do in your MES versus how much you do in the PI system infrastructure. This is a very important concept, and if you would like to have more conversation with me, I'm more than happy to meet you tonight or tomorrow and show you examples of companies doing this. For example, this is a slide from a presentation by a company called Rodea Solvay Group that was given at our users conference in April. And you notice in their picture how the PI system infrastructure is addressing security, PI-based applications, and core functionality connecting to the ERP and business systems. Notice they still have MES solutions connected to the process control system and also connected to the ERP system. So they didn't replace MES, they just changed the amount of functionality being done in MES versus PI. So enough of the concepts. Let's start looking at some actual case studies, the art of the possible. So first I'd like to go through is Pertamina. In any company, you have a value chain where you take lower value products like crude oil, refine, ship, market into the finished products. And so you add value. And so the real value of the PI system is being able to integrate from the supply all the way to the marketing and provide a real-time situational awareness across the entire fuels value chain. The Pertamina value chain is very complex. They have 13,000 islands, 6 refineries, 120 terminals, 3,400 vessels, and 98 vessels and 3,400 fuel stations. And so, like many companies, they have these areas, these groups, transportation or manufacturing, and they all have their different systems, and they may not be working well together. And so what they chose is they decided to purchase the PI system. So they purchased PI, and then they migrated these solutions and applications into the PI system infrastructure. And then they also layered in what's called best-of-breed, I'm not sure what's going on there, but best-of-breed applications to provide this integration of their entire fuels value chain. And so let's look at their high-level architecture. So this is the PI system infrastructure, and then they layered on top of these and integrated these best-of-breed solutions, whether it be trading and operations or optimization, their SAP system, and then the refinery control systems. Yokogawa and Honeywell were the predominant control systems in their 6 refineries. And then they provided not only information to their various refineries, but also they put in a decision support system center, similar to what you saw this morning with Aramco and some of the other power gen companies. These are just some summary displays that they put on top for their managers. And then some of the analytical displays giving them, for example, an overall view of their product inventories across their value chain and across their regional terminals. So let's now transition to another company called NiSource, which is a gas transmission and distribution company. So you can see their value chain starts from the gas production going through the compressor stations, the storage, the meters, and then distribution out to their various customers. Another view of their system. And one of the things that they did, and we see in many of our customers who have SCADA systems, is that they basically use PI very strategically and integrated that into their SCADA network. So essentially, the SCADA systems typically only bring in maybe 60 or 70% of the data into the SCADA system. And so you have a lot of what is called stranded data out in the RTUs and across the enterprise. And so what they did, and what many of our customers did, is they put in a PI system, integrated it to the SCADA system. They brought in stranded data, and then they proceeded to start integrating various data sources into the PI system. And then they had multiple types of SCADA systems, and so they integrated to the other SCADA systems and did SCADA normalization. And then they also used the PI system as part of their cybersecurity strategy, separating the process control network and the business network. And then continued to bring in other data sources, including adding a PI server at each of the SCADAs to basically work with the SCADA system on the process control network. And so these are just some of the displays in PI that are essentially primary displays for their control systems. So essentially they've replicated the SCADA system, but they've added additional capabilities, in this case using ActiveX buttons on the process book display. And this is just another very dense display, but this is of all their compressors, key compression across their entire pipeline system. And so I'm going to skip these because of time, but suffice to say that they have a number of web-based displays using PI CoreSite, using, they use one of our partners to interface into iPad to do geospatial view and mobility of their compressor stations. And again, they use PI CoreSite a lot in how they run and use the data from the PI system. And they did a benefits calculation where they said over the first year they saved over almost $6 million in avoided repair costs and another $1 million in avoidance of penalties from gas availability to their customers. The last case study is one around Talisman Energy, where they're actually using the PI system to monitor over 2,800 rotating pieces of equipment across their enterprise. Some of their assets are 56 gas turbines and 40 gas compressors, 35 main oil pumps. And not that I like to show architectures, but I do want to illustrate that it's a completely PI-based application. So they have a PI server, PI ACE, Advanced Calculation Engine, PI AF, PI notifications, PI process book, and they've configured PI AF-based decision rules. And they use these to do sophisticated alarm roll-ups. So let's look at some of these displays. Again, these are completely PI-based displays and applications configured by Talisman working with one of our partners. So you have process data and metadata. You have basically an operating envelope where you have constraints and the actual operating envelope itself, basically calculating in real time where this particular gas compressor is running within the operating envelope, the ability to select other displays for this piece of equipment easily, and the ability to do a historical review of where the operating envelope and operating parameters have changed over time. And they use, again, the key thing here is they use PI AF as the underlying infrastructure for this whole application. And I'm not going to go through this in detail. Suffice that they use it to store alarms, multiple alarm limits. If you have interest in looking at this, please look me up and we can go through this application in detail. And so, I have many case studies, and what I hope I've done is giving you kind of the art of the possible, but also some key concepts that you can use to understand the PI system. The Citco Corpus Christi using the PI system for an overall refinery performance display. Again, a complete drill down of their KPI displays that they use to run the refinery using the PI system. This last display is really an interesting, this display is of an interesting where they're using PI performance equations to do real-time aggregation of environmental limits and calculating how much room they have before they exceed a limit for a particular unit. And the last two are strictly where the PI system is actually used to help aid unit startup and shutdown by going through and monitoring and providing conditions when certain situations are met or not met during the startup and shutdown process. So, in conclusion, I hope that I've demonstrated to you why companies are selecting the PI system and how they're using it, and how they're generating value now and value over time, using it as an infrastructure versus a solution approach with less cost and risk. How they're, one of the other reasons in the area of PI system performance and functionality. How they're using it to increase asset reliability, safety, and performance. How they're using it to integrate their plant, division, enterprise, and leverage their ecosystem, and addressing their data volume, quality, and digital security. And with that, I would like to say thank you for your time, and I hope that you found my presentation of value to you. And again, if you would like to talk to me about anything in here, please come see me or work with the Korean OSIsoft team. Thank you very much.